Today I'm excited to be unboxing and to be checking out the brand new iPhone 16 as well as the iPhone 16 Pro. I have both models here in black today. Now this year the iPhone 16 introduced a brand new camera control. We also get the same action button as that we saw on last year's Pro models. We now also get the A18 chip inside, which is going to be optimized for Apple Intelligence. We also get a new Fusion camera on the back as well as better battery life inside. I'm really keen to check out all of these new features and also talk about how the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus compare to last year's iPhone 15 as well as the 15 Plus, which I also have here today, to see how the two compare and ultimately talk about who the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus are for and whether you should upgrade. But first, before we unbox, to celebrate the growth of this channel, I am giving away this brand new iPhone 16 in Ultramarine. For a chance to win, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your favorite feature of the iPhone 16 with your Instagram username. And then follow me on Instagram at Dion Schuddeboom, where I will announce the winner on the 31st of October. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and unbox these phones now. So as you can see, I decided to go on the black model here for both. So in terms of prices, the iPhone 16 starts at $799, which is going to be the same as last year, and comes with 128 gigabytes, which I do think can work for some, but it is approaching the point where I would recommend for people who make heavy use of the camera or say download a lot of apps to consider upgrading to that 256 gigabyte option, just to give yourself a little bit more headroom. So this here is the 16. Let's also unbox the 16 Plus here. One pull tab and another. There we go. Also starting with the same 128 gigabytes. Now the 16 Plus comes in at $899, so there's a $100 price difference between the two. And here we go, the moment of truth. Wow, look at that. Now, first impressions, this is really black. Now, Apple, when it comes to their colors, often has many different shades and variations, particularly when it comes to their white and black colors. Sometimes they're more of a dark gray and their white can be very warm, but this right here looks proper black. And I've got to say, this looks super sleek. Now, unlike on previous years, the iPhone 16 actually comes in some really bold colors. For example, that ultramarine blue that I'm giving away. But this year I decided to go for the very timeless and classic black color, and I'm really glad I did. This here looks stunning. Like I said earlier, this really is a proper black. It is about as dark as it gets. You can see here as I angle it out of the light, it gets really dark, and then into the light, you can see that really cool contrast with the Apple logo between that matte texture and then that glossy there on the Apple logo. And we get that new camera module here on the top left. So let's take a look at each phone here. Put the boxes off to the, ooh, actually, the boxes are a little bit different, but let's take a look at that in a second here. First, the stars of the show. That, of course, is the 16 and the 16 Plus. This here gives you a rough idea of the size differences as well. We get these really nice matte aluminum frames, even darker than the back. Really black aluminum, looks super sleek. And here's the peel. Voila, there goes number one. And number two, my favorite part of the job. So in terms of the feel in the hand, I've got to say both phones feel very similar than they do compared to last year. And we'll do a more in-depth comparison to the 15 Pro and the 15 as well. But these feel really comfortable to hold. Now, chances are you're going to be coming from an older model than the 15, right? Probably say a 12, maybe a 13, or even an iPhone 11. And the design of the iPhone 16 is super nice and really comfortable to hold. Thanks to having flat edges, but still slightly rounded corners, as you can see. And that makes them really nice in the palm. They don't dig into your palm and still have a really modern looking design. And here we are, both phones booted up. Now I want to take a closer look at the back here as this new camera module. Now this actually, I say new, but this really reminds me of the iPhone 10, which also had a sort of vertically stacked camera module between the ultra wide lens and then the main lens as well. Now we have a main 48 megapixel sensor and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide that is on both the regular as well as the Plus model, and then the flash module you can see is kind of out of the camera module, which is a first I think for this year, and I kind of like it. I think it makes a lot more sense for this size phone, especially if you have two lenses. Just quickly here comparing it to the iPhone 15, you can see that it just makes more sense. I always thought this was a little bit of a weird use of space. The individual lenses also appear to be quite a bit bigger, or at least the housing for the lenses is going to be bigger, which I think works well in this design. It kind of has this pill-shaped cutout as opposed to the square. I definitely prefer this pill-shaped cutout. I think it looks super clean. Again, especially here in this black color, I'm really falling in love with it. So glad I got it. Already though, what you can see is we do have a little bit of fingerprints here on the Plus as well as on the regular model. That is going to be The one downside when you go with a color like this is you do get those fingerprints, but you know, some might say that's worth it, and I think I might be one of them. Now over here on the left side, we also see that new action button. This is going to be new for the regular iPhones, as previously we only had this on the Pro models. This here I think is a really useful feature. I personally use it to just trigger the flashlight if, say, late at night I'm looking for something, or even say I'm looking for something in my bag. It's just useful to have that physical control right on your phone. But even more interesting than that is, of course, going to be that brand new camera control that we have here on the left side. Now, unlike the action button here, it doesn't actually protrude from the phone. So as you can see, it does sit flush, and it has a sapphire crystal over top, as this is much more than just a button. But as you can hear, it does click. I'll let you have a listen here. There you go. So it does click, very similar to the other buttons. I would say a similar level of resistance as well, but you can also do things like a half press. You can even use it. We'll go in and test this later on in the video after I've set up the phones, but really interesting to see this. I was particularly surprised to see Apple introduce this to both the Pro models as well as the regular models. As a feature like this, especially one that's so camera oriented, I kind of expected them to leave for only the Pro models, but that said, I'm happy to see it on all model iPhones. Right, so just before we get back to the phones here, I want to take a look at what is included in the rest of the boxes, as they are going to be a little bit different compared to last year. The first thing I noticed is that the cable is wound in a different way. So it used to be circular, and now it's more of an oval pill-shaped cutout here. Let's just make sure that the cable itself is the same. Let me just very elegantly take this cable out of the box here. There we go. And then we also have the SIM ejector tool. Now I'm based in London, so of course here in the UK we do still have the SIM tray, which I believe, yeah, that's on the same area as before, here on the lower left-hand side of the phone. Of course, if you are in the US, your iPhone will have only an eSIM. Personally, I'm glad to still have a physical SIM tray, especially when it comes to travel. So that's included. The card itself, or the ejector itself, looks the same as before. Now the cable itself also nice braided, USB-C to USB-C cable. I don't really see any difference here. I think the length is the same. It may even be a little bit shorter. I'm not sure. I'll put that on screen, but definitely not longer, and feels very much the same. Now beneath that we have the paperwork, and I've heard rumors that they no longer include the Apple stickers, which I think would be a real shame. So let's find out if that is true or not. So I really hope they still have them. We got this little pill-shaped cutouts here of the paper. I think that's quite unique. But indeed, no more Apple stickers. Basically what that means, you have no more reason to buy a new iPhone. You don't need to get the iPhone 16. No, I'm joking, of course, but I did always like to have the Apple stickers. I can't say I really use them often, but it was just a nice little differentiating touch for that iPhones had compared to other phones. And I guess Apple products have always had them for as long as I can remember, at least. So it's a bit of a shame, but I understand it from an environmental perspective. That said, I don't know if they really need 100 different copies of this warranty information. So I'm not sure what the angle is there. But anyway, that's the paperwork. And that's everything you get in the box. And of course, that's going to be the same here for the Plus as well. Just to double check here. Yeah, indeed. So same paperwork. And then we have the exact same USB-C cable as well right there, braided, which is really nice. I found these definitely last longer compared to the previous Apple cables. And back to the phones here. So first, I want to do a quick little comparison, size comparison between the 16 and the 16 Plus, in case you're not sure which model it is that you want to get, or if you're considering perhaps going up to the larger size, or maybe even downsizing to the smaller size. So the smaller one is going to be 6.1 inches, which is the same as on previous years, and then we have 6.7 inches on the Plus, which is also the same as previously. And this difference is quite substantial. I would say in the hand, you definitely feel it, but you also do get used to it. I know that for me previously, I used to have the smaller size iPhone, and then later I upgraded to the larger size. I'm talking about the Pro Max here, and it really took me only a couple of days to get used to it, and I really fell in love with the advantages of this larger size. Of course, first you get that larger display, which makes watching videos, even typing messages, all the more comfortable, and you also get a much bigger battery. And this, I think, is a really underrated feature of these larger phones. They last you, compared to, say, one full day on the regular iPhone, a Plus or Pro Max size phone can easily last you a day and a half, even 2 days with lighter use. But I can also appreciate that, of course, the 6.1-inch size of the regular iPhone 16 is that perfect balance between portability and usability. This is super comfortable to hold in the hand. You can reach the other end easily, even the top corner for your control center, and it's also really comfortable in the pocket, as that is one area where these larger phones can start to get a little bit large and sometimes get a little bit tricky to fit in your pocket. Every person is going to have their own individual preferences, but I really encourage you to try out both sizes, like I said, and I hope this video can give you an idea of what the two are like and how they compare. But speaking of that, to better test these phones and show you what each is capable of and also test some of these new features, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break and set up both these iPhones. I'll be right back. And we're back. So I've now set up my iPhone 16 as well as my 16 Plus. I've transferred all of my data over from my 15s, and as you can see, we're now running iOS 18 here on both phones, and they are looking really good. I especially like this new wallpaper. I think it adds a really nice, fresh look to your iPhone. But now let's take a look at some of the new features and really start putting them to the test, and so I can give you guys my first impressions of some of them. Now, first, I do want to touch on Apple Intelligence, as this is what Apple called the iPhone 16 the first iPhone to be designed from the ground up for Apple Intelligence. And while this sounds great, the unfortunate thing is that today, if you were to buy an iPhone 16, you don't have access to any of those Apple Intelligence features just yet. It could still be months before we get those, and in certain parts of the world, like for example the EU, where there's a lot more regulation, it could be around half a year or so before we actually get these features. And it's really unfortunate to see, as it's also a little bit out of character for Apple, I think, to announce a feature way before it comes out, or in other words, basically ship the iPhone before it's complete. As again, Apple really touted this Apple Intelligence feature for specifically the iPhone 16, and yet when you buy one today, you don't get any of these features. But I digress. I do hope they'll do that differently in the future, and I'll be sure to review these iPhones, or specifically Apple Intelligence when that does come out, so do be sure to stay tuned for that in the future. However, for today, there are still many other features that the iPhone 16s do have and come with on day one. And the first I want to talk about is that new ceramic shield. So this is basically Apple's newest version of the glass that covers the front display. Now, I will say that over the years, the glass that's on the front of the iPhones has become a lot more crack resistant, which is really good. But at the same time, it's definitely become more prone to scratching. So my iPhone 15 actually had a lot of scratches on it. In fact, here, I'll see if I can quickly show you that now. I wonder if you'll even be able to see it here, but I have a lot of scratches, particularly around here on the top of the phone. And I do hope that the new iPhone 16s are going to be a little bit more scratch resistant, as I think this really is the area where they need to focus on now. Another feature that I really welcome on the new iPhone 16s is the action button that was previously only on the 15 Pros. So I'm really glad to see it here on the 16s as well. So that's the button here that is situated above the volume buttons. And this button is customizable. And I've set mine here, as you can see, to activate the torch. This is really useful. Say I'm looking for something in my bag, or say I'm coming home late and the hallway is dark and I need to find the lock for my door, something like that. It's super useful to have that right here as a hardware switch on the iPhone. I also find that it's really hard to accidentally trigger, as you can see, a quick press doesn't do anything. You really have to press and hold it for like half a second or so for it to trigger. And this button can be heavily customized. You can even set up a specific shortcut, which really means you can pretty much trigger it to do anything. Think, for example, like a smart home appliance. If you want to trigger your lights, or say your air conditioning or something, you can do that too. But I like to keep it simple with the torch. And then powering the new iPhone 16s is going to be that A18 chip. Now, this is actually a 2-generation jump. So the previous iPhone 15 had the A16 Bionic chip. So we skip the 17 and then go straight to the 18. And I will say that in terms of benchmarks and in terms of the data that Apple has provided, these chips do seem to perform really well and are actually quite a big jump over the previous iPhone 15. So for example, according to Apple's data, they say this chip, the A18, is going to be 30% faster on the iPhone 15, and it's going to be 60% faster than, say, the iPhone 12. And I think a lot of people who are looking at the iPhone 16 are probably going to come from around the iPhone 11, 12, maybe 13. So in that sense, you're getting a big jump in improvements. All right, so now I want to take a look and test what is probably the biggest physical difference with the iPhone 16 as opposed to the iPhone 15, and that is the new camera control. So that is this button here that you will find on the right side of the iPhones. Now, Apple has refused to call this a button in their presentation, but make no mistake, it is a button, and here it is on the regular iPhone 16 and then on the 16 Plus as well. So I want to quickly trial this out and then give you guys my impressions on what it's like to use. I've never used it, so let me go ahead and bring in a subject object here into frame. So let's say I have the iPhone here, iPhone 16 in this beautiful blue color. I think it looks really nice. This is the one that I'm giving away, of course. So first of all, to activate it, I believe it's just a press. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, there we go. And then the camera app opens immediately, first prompting me to set up the photographic style. So this is something that I'm going to set up later, as right now I really want to play with this camera control here. And let's take a look. So I believe you can zoom in by sort of scrolling with your finger. Let's see if that works. No, that is actually not doing anything right now. Let me click it. Okay, there we go. So that takes a photo. So to press it takes a photo. Oh, interesting. Okay, so when I'm zooming, you really have to apply a little bit of pressure. You see, if I just normally swipe my finger... Oh, no, wait, now it seems to be working. Hold on, let me wait for that to disappear. There we go. Yeah, so interestingly, so you can see right now I'm not really applying any pressure. I am touching it though, but it's not zooming. I have to really apply a bit of pressure, and now it should work. There we go. And now it smoothly zooms in and out, and there's a little bit of haptic feedback. So with every 1x zoom, I believe, it does a little click. So there's the 2x, and then I should go into 5. Okay, so interesting. It's quite smooth. That does feel quite smooth, I must say. Let's see if I can also zoom out to the ultra wide. Yes, I can. So that's 0.5x. And you can see I got my iPhone 16 Pros here. That will be unboxed next. But I can also zoom in here. Yeah, so again, you have to really press down a little bit before it activates the zoom. Not sure how I feel about that. I guess they did that to eliminate potential accidental touches, perhaps. Kind of wish it would just work like that. I first have to make a conscious effort to press a little bit and then zoom in. There we go. So this zooms in really quite far. As you can see, it looks like up to 10x. Pretty good quality considering a 10x zoom, but not bad. Now, I believe I can also change the functionality of this button by double clicking. No? Let me see. Press and hold. Let me see how to do this here. See, this is the fun thing. I'm experimenting this live on camera here just to give you my impressions. There we go. So a double sort of medium press. So it's not a tap, it's like a medium press. And as you can see here, see, that was too soft. You got to go click, click. There we go. There we go. So then you can switch between zoom, depth of field, and your exposure. You can also cameras. I wonder what that does. And then you have your styles, right? That's new as well. You have a lot of photographic styles, and they're now much more tunable as well. So let's jump into that. Okay, so here we can cycle between all the different modes. You can see what that does to the color profiles. Of course, this is going to be a very primitive test here in the studio, but for my full review, I'll do more in-depth tests. But this is just to give you a sneak preview here, I guess a little taste of what this does here. Okay, yeah, so right off the bat, I feel like zoom is going to be probably the most natural mode for this. Looks like I'm in some sort of black and white picture profile, but it's not like this camera control doesn't add anything that you can't already do. For example, you can, of course, already zoom on the camera screen like this. In fact, you can even do a one-handed zoom, which is what I use most often. As you can see, I find this really useful, probably more precise, actually, than using the button because you have a broader area to zoom, so you can be more precise with it. But it's kind of cool. I do like the physical click. I think that is kind of satisfying. One thing that I was definitely thinking about when I first saw this was the positioning of it. So now I want to quickly switch over to the regular iPhone 16 and see how that feels. So let's go ahead and see if I can also open it while the phone is locked. Let's see. There we go. Yep, so a single click, even when the phone is locked, will open up your camera here. So let's take a look here. Let's get rid of this 1 second. Right, so I want to talk a little bit about the positioning of this button. So right now I'm obviously in landscape mode, and as you can see, my finger falls right next to the button. You can see naturally, if I position my finger naturally, it's right next to the button, which is a little bit inconvenient because this way, if I do want to reach over and press it, I really have to almost lift this index finger off the phone to then be able to click it and press it, which isn't the most comfortable, especially because a lot of the phone, the weight of the phone is going to be in my left hand. Like if I do this with one hand, no, I'm going to drop the phone. That's not a comfortable grip at all, unless I kind of put my middle finger there and then click it. I guess this will be the most comfortable, but it's really not that comfortable. I think, as you can probably tell, if I were to use one hand, I'd much rather hold it like this and then just use my thumb to take the picture. That's instinctually what I'm thinking. I wish it was a little bit longer. As you can see, my index finger is right here. I wish the button was there. It would have made it a lot more natural to use. Now, of course, in portrait mode, now I am left-handed, so that actually lines up pretty well with my middle finger here on the right, which is not bad. That actually works pretty well, being left-handed. But of course, most people are right-handed, so if I were to hold this in my right hand, Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so it's a little bit on the lower side. As you can see, I wish it was more higher in this case, like properly in like the middle of the phone. As you can see, that would much better align with my thumb, but it sits just beneath that. That makes it a little bit harder to reach. Again, not the most comfortable thing in the world, especially because in portrait mode, you're holding your phone in one hand. So it's a little bit, especially if I'm holding my phone up like this, yeah, I could see that falling if I'm not careful here. And then again, using just the on-screen controls are gonna be more comfortable. This really is gonna be best in landscape mode like this, but then you will need two hands. I do think you need the two hands to secure the phone in one and then use the camera control in the other. All in all, I think it's a nice shutter button, and I perhaps could see it being useful for zoom, but I don't think I'm gonna be using it that much. Like, when I think about the iPhone camera, what makes it so great, or any smartphone camera for that matter, right, is that it's always in your pocket and you quickly pull it out and take a photo and capture the moment. It's not like a DSLR that you first got to set up and fine tune. No, you take it out, capture the moment. And when I think of that, I want whatever is most efficient and fastest. Now, I like that I can simply launch the camera app by pressing this button. I think that's really cool. Of course, you can also technically set the action button to do that. But anyway, this button is nice for that. And I also like that you can use it to physically take a picture. That kind of does feel camera-like and is quite satisfying. But when it comes to other camera functions like the zoom, I'm going to test it, so I'm not going to draw any conclusions just yet, but just based on my impressions, the positioning of the button and the fact that you kind of need to press and hold a little bit to activate does make it a bit harder. Though I will say I've used it now for a couple minutes and it is already becoming a little bit more natural. I do think the positioning of the button really should have been a bit lower. I think Apple should have prioritized the landscape mode as opposed to the portrait mode. As if you're gonna fine-tune your photos and really dial in all those settings, you're probably going to be shooting in landscape mode, in which case I just wish the button was just a little bit lower to make it a lot easier to reach. Anyway, I've spoken a long time here about this button. I think it's really interesting, so I definitely wanted to share with you sort of my first impressions using it. Okay, so aside from the capture button, we do also get a few upgrades on the actual cameras themselves. So we still get a 48 megapixel main sensor. However, this is now what Apple calls a fusion camera, and this is essentially going to allow for better 24 megapixel photos and also better 2x crop photos, as you do still have that 2x crop mode, which will use the main lens, much like what we saw last year. But this year, it should have more detail and also have a better depth of field, so I'm very curious to test that. Beneath that, we have the same 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens as what we saw previously. However, this year, it now does have autofocus, so that should give you a little bit more depth, and of course, that sensor is also going to be responsible for the macro photography. Now, the iPhone 16, thanks to this new lens positioning, putting the cameras next to each other, also is able to take spatial video as well as spatial audio, and this is going to be for the 3 people who have the Apple Vision Pro. Anyway, let's also talk a little bit about the differences between the iPhone 16s and the iPhone 15s, as there are some changes, I think some more important than others, but let me go ahead and go through just the main ones. So first of all, we have that new camera control that we briefly looked at earlier. Again, how important, how big of a difference is that going to make? I'm going to leave that for my review to give my conclusions, but you heard my thoughts on me basically testing it so far. You do also get the action button, and oh, here it is, and this I actually think is really useful compared to the mute switch that we have on the iPhone 15s. Now, I know some people really like this mute switch, but I think the action button can give that functionality plus a lot more. Again, like the torch, like I use it, and I really think that this is a very useful button to have and something I definitely miss when I'm switching to another phone. So in this case, I'm glad that's brought over to the 16 as well. And then powering the iPhone 16s, you of course have that new A18 chip. Now this is going to be a 2-generation jump from the A16 chip that we found in the iPhone 15s. And while today this may not show the largest difference, in a few years time it definitely will. And it's definitely going to impact the longevity of these models. In fact, I would expect the iPhone 16s to get 1, potentially even 2 years more of software support and updates. Again, because this processor is a 2-generation jump over the iPhone 15. So for the long run, I would say the iPhone 16 may be worth getting just for that extra powerful chip and also for having more RAM. In this case, both iPhone 16 models come with 8 gigabytes. Now, another thing that I haven't tested yet, of course, but that I will before my review, is that the battery life is also meant to be better on the iPhone 16. So the battery is going to be slightly larger, both on the 16 as well as on the 16 Plus. Now, the 15 and especially the 15 Plus already delivered really great battery life. So if the 16 can build on that, I would say the more, the better. So to answer the question, should you upgrade from the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus to the 16? Well, of course, the answer is no. However, if you are coming from, say, the iPhone 11 or 12, should you get the iPhone 15 or the 16? Well, I think for some people, it may be worth saving $100 and getting the 15 instead of the 16. However, in my opinion, the iPhone 16 does offer some really valuable features. Again, the most important of which is going to be that new A18 chip for the longevity, the action button, and also better battery life. And I also think the camera improvements, including that camera control, will add up over time, especially if you enjoy using your camera on your iPhone. But anyway, that's been my unboxing and also my first impressions of the iPhone 16 as well as the iPhone 16 Plus and some of its new features. Let me know if you have any questions at all, particularly of things that you would like me to cover in my full review of these phones that's coming very soon. So again, be sure to subscribe to not miss that. And as always, I'll leave the purchase links to both iPhones down in the description. And if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check out my iPhone 16 unboxing videos. I'm also going to be unboxing the 16 Pro as well as the 16 Pro Max very soon. And I'm also uploading a iPhone 16 first things to do video, which I'll leave linked on screen when this is out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.